Well, hello. Welcome to another episode of Church Leadership Lab, really where our goal is to empower healthy churches. We want everything that we do to help empower healthy churches, including the conversations we have. And so we're glad to have another one. My name is Scott, one of the co-hosts, and the other co-host is Casey. Hello. Casey.
Hi.
We need to come up with like a way for me to... or just like an automatic, like, and my other co-host is, and then
I
you
want
just
a sound
like, jump
effect, like a drum roll or something. I don't know.
Oh, I like that. I wasn't even thinking that, but we can work that in.
I'll work on it.
That would be powerful.
It wouldn't it? Yeah. All right. Well, we're excited to have Gino with us today. Gino, you have a diverse background in creative work, marketing, operations. I know that you have as well over a decade of ministry and church planning experience, and now put all that together serving as a network and partnership director with Exponential. And a lot of your work goes to increasing Exponential's community of multiplication advocates. Super excited to talk about that. Gino is a husband to Kimberly, a fur dad to Penny, and is a resident of the Nashville area, where he serves Crosspoint Church on their weekend production team. Gino, welcome to Church Leadership Lab.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we are excited as well. Looking forward to the conversation and diving into certainly everything you guys are doing at Exponential. But before we do, I would love to ask this question. We ask this to everybody. What's something? So we all have like the bio that we give on the website or whatever. But what's something that doesn't make that public bio that all your friends and family would know about you?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for a while. I would say probably that I'm a huge music nerd.
Okay.
Just, love live music, collect vinyl, listen to everything under the sun. Always have music playing in the background. So
you have a vinyl collection?
I do.
Okay, so what is like your prized vinyl? Like there's a flood, your house gets robbed, and it's like the one thing that gets destroyed or taken and you are devastated to have lost. What's the one?
Just the one.
Just the one.
Just the one. That's hard. There's three of them that are coming to mind, so I'll have to pick one. I would say, okay, I'll give three. David Bowie, The Rise and Fall of Spiders of Mars. Probably one of my top 5 records of all time. Jeff Buckley, Grace, and the Beatles, Abbey Road. My all-time favorite Beatles song is on that album.
I'm okay with all three. We can continue this episode. Like I'm okay with all of them.
Right. I was in my parents' basement not too long ago and came across my mom's like vinyl collection, which was just like stored deep inside a cabinet, like collecting dust. And I basically both like asked and also was like, "Hey mom, I'm going to take all these. Okay." She didn't care at all, but my kids have loved like diving into records and playing records and all of this stuff. And it's like, they're fascinated by it. It's like probably how people listening to records like experience the iPhone. It's like reverse. And they're like, how does this happen? This is amazing.
Yeah.
So, I love it. That's awesome. Well, while we could talk about records and music for a long time, because similar, I have a passion and love music. I know that we want to spend our time talking about multiplication, talk about church planning. So would love to just jump into kind of the idea of multiplication. For some, that idea specifically like church planning is something that either they haven't investigated much, don't know much about, maybe don't even prioritize. So I think the first thing I'd love to just hear your thoughts on, Gino, is why is multiplication essential for churches to prioritize?
Yeah, I think across the board, when you talk about multiplication, it's not just multiplication of churches through church planting, but you're talking about multiplication of disciples. You're talking about multiplication of missionaries, whether that be local or abroad. So I think it really goes back to, Jesus's final words, the Great Commission and commandment of, going, spread the gospel, to all ends of the earth and make disciples. And I think it's it's key to seeing our mission fulfilled as Exponential, and I think it's key to the church today in the U.S. We have to have that mindset of multiplication with everything that we're doing, just to see the revival and the renewal in the church that I think we need going forward.
Yeah. And in your experience, like when somebody has that healthy multiplication mindset, is like, do you kind of see it across the board? Meaning it's not like, well, hey, we make a bunch of disciples, but we don't really care about this like church planting or like, is it sort of like you see it happening holistically, whether it's more leaders, more disciples, more, like as far as that goes?
Yeah, I think, there's got to be a paradigm shift, I think, across the board from leadership to denominations to networks, where they're really seeing the shift from the programmatic model in the current mindset of a lot of church leaders to the more of a multiplication mindset. So I think it's there are quite a few leaders that live it across the board, and there's some that are have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and some that just don't see it at all. So I think over the last 40 years or so, just because of the megachurch model, and just butts and seats and programs and just continuing to see what we call addition of multi-site and more people in the congregation. Just changing it from addition to multiplication. I think that's where the shift happens, and that's where we spend a lot of time, with our learning communities and cohorts and things like that. And then if you come to the conference, there's the inspirational side of what we're doing on the stage, where we talk about our theme for the year. But then there's 200 plus workshops where we are equipping leaders in all things, and it points back to multiplication.
I love that.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It definitely did. I think especially like as you're talking about that, just that mindset shift, because it isn't necessarily okay. Like let's do like a multiplication program, along with it's like, no, it's a complete perspective change for everything that you're doing, and probably even where your resources go, where, all of that. So yeah, I thought it was really good.
Well, like you said, it's a different model. The multiplication not versus, that sounds like one is against one another, but just a different business model. I kind of don't like that choice of words either, but addition versus multiplication, it's a different mindset as to how you're growing the church. I kind of want to stop there for a second. Some people may go, well, what is the difference? There was a subtle difference. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because they're similar, but they're not.
Yeah. We've been focused really hard on the last 18 months on really what does that look like for church leaders, and how do they make that shift? So we've been working behind the scenes, and we're launching a bunch of stuff in March. Our customer journey that will be pathways into kind of this multiplication, what we're calling roadmap, and where leaders fit into that. We're looking for catalytic moments in Orlando to have that light bulb go off in their head saying, yeah, I can see where that makes sense. So how do I get involved in that? And then, looking at, you had talked about the differences between programmatic versus multiplication. Changing the scorecard and the metrics of how churches are measuring success. Is it butts and seats, or is it disciples made? Is it, baptism, which is also a great metric, or is it, missionaries sent out either locally or globally? So there's those subtle things. It also, one of the things that we're working on that hopefully we'll have done within the next couple months is I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but this will be talked about greatly in Orlando in March, is a multiplication operating system, kind of like an open source operating system that that we'll make available to leaders as they have those moments of clarity or paradigm shift, and how do we make that happen in our church? So yeah.
I think we definitely do want to talk about Orlando, because some people are like, what is Orlando? We've heard a little bit about that. But before we get there, the words unprecedented and pandemic and post-pandemic, like I wish I could erase all of that from my vocabulary, and someday we will. But until we can, in the post-COVID mindset, how have you, through the eyes of Exponential, how have you seen church planting shift? Or do you see shifts coming, but specifically in this season, post-pandemic, whether good or bad, or maybe a little bit of both? How do you see church planting shifting or multiplication shifting?
Yeah, I think because of the pandemic, a lot of churches had to really step up their digital game and their online campus game.
Sure.
So they were, where a lot of churches were heading that direction, they were really forced to draw a line in the sand and say, yeah, if we want to continue to exist and grow, we need to make this a priority and make it happen so that we can continue to gather as a community. So I think that really kind of shifted things towards digital models. New Thing launched Digital Church Planning Network last year. The metaverse. There's been a lot of conversation just in the last 12 months around the metaverse. We've got, our partnership with Leadership Network. They do a lot of stuff in regards to what's happening there. Also, you think about groups out of Houston like Church Project, or even groups out of Kansas City like KC Underground. They're doing a lot of things with house churches and micro churches. So I can see those 4 areas of church planting being expressions of the church going forward, whether it be, like I said, digital, meta, micro, or house. You're starting to see a lot of conversations and a lot of growth in those areas because of what happened through the pandemic.
Yeah, I find it interesting too, because in one sense, those are like very polar opposite ends of the spectrum. Like you have churches in the metaverse versus like a house church. Like in some ways, you step back and you're like, those are almost like antithetical to each other, which they aren't. And what I think is interesting is like is almost the diversity of what church planting can look like. 20 years ago, I think it was you get a core group, you grow that core group to a certain size, raise a certain amount of money, launch hopefully at a certain size, to carry your momentum, and you grow it, and hopefully like the plane takes off from the runway and it keeps flying. And there's kind of had a specific type of church when we talked about church planning, a specific goal. I do think it's really interesting you bring up like there's actually a lot of diversity now in what that expression of church looks like. And I would say too, it's not a and this is the right way, right? It's like if you don't have, if you're not just an online, it's like nobody, at least I, hear you all saying we're not saying this is one way, the only way, but man, there's a lot of ways that we can seek to plant churches, multiply, make more disciples, and see the kingdom continue to spread.
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, then like, because obviously as the expressions change or the, what church planting looks like changes, like what are you seeing as far as the biggest needs that church planters have, as they're looking to, like, again, that spectrum is different, but even just looking to maybe plant a church, as we may just normally think about that core group, all of that, like what are some of the biggest needs that you're seeing in church planters today?
Yeah, I think it continues just to be resourcing. Previously it was denominations that were doing the planting, and then it grew to, networks. And now I think it's, groups like the Houston Church Planting Network and groups like Plant Tennessee and Plant North Carolina and New Thing that are bringing together not only multi-network, multi-denomination, but also multi-organizations that are coming together to help resource planters, provide them with, tons of information on how best to plant, whatever expression that may be, whether it be traditional or in the metaverse, and giving them learning opportunities and what fits best in their culture and their climate and their community, in their wiring and their calling. So I think just resourcing and making those resources available for planters, I think is still probably priority number one, and that's our biggest priority as well.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you may have literally just answered this, but for those listening or watching that don't know as much about Exponential as an organization, can you break that down to us on a super practical level? What is Exponential and how does it support church planters? I think there's a subtle difference about you help churches start versus you're resourcing them or connecting them with networks. Like, really break that down. What is the difference? When it goes, what exactly is
so Exponential started 20 years as the new church planting conference that was tied to a denomination. Our founders, Todd Wilson and Dave Ferguson, took it over and basically said, we're going to go outside of just this one denomination and bring multi-denominations together, multi-networks together to really feed into kind of this new thought behind multiplication and all the things that we feel are necessary to grow the church in the U.S. So Exponential as an organization, we consider ourselves to be resource providers, whether we are creating that or we are aggregating that or we are bringing together the thought leaders to help with the resourcing of church planners and church leaders. So, excuse me, we bring together those resources and provide them to church leaders. Doesn't matter what denomination, what network, or what tribe they're affiliated with. We bring them all together and say, hey, these are the best of the best resources that we know of, and these are the best of the best books, authors, things like that we feel can help you as you're journeying. That's a hard word to say. Traveling down the road of multiplication, whether that be somebody who's exploring church planting or an established pastor who is now looking to, what does it look like to shift from programmatic to multiplication, and how do I do that with my church?
So Orlando is kind of like the flagship event. So who comes to Orlando? What do they expect? And like, what do they walk away from this event? From your viewpoint, if somebody walks away like that was a win, they came for exactly what we wanted them to come for. What does that look like?
Yeah, so Orlando we consider that a global conference where basically all of those things that I just talked about from a resourcing perspective, we bring them all together at First Baptist Orlando. We have 5,600 leaders that come in that attend, 100 plus organizations that are there resourcing those leaders, a couple dozen pre-conference tracks, 200 plus workshop tracks throughout the week. So 5 main stage sessions, which we consider to be our inspirational moments, our catalytic moments where people have that light bulb go off and say, okay, how do I then get equipped? Our theme this year is around evangelism. So everything that from main stage will be around the topic of evangelism and how that affects everything that we're talking about through multiplication. The workshop tracks serve the leaders to equip them from a leadership perspective, church planting perspective, multiplication, evangelism, disciple making, urban church planting. I mean, you name it. There's 20 different leadership tracks that will have, like I said, over 200 workshops throughout the week. So coming away from that is really, about between 50 and 60% of the attendees in Orlando are normally first timers. So it's how do we get them into what we're all about? How do we inform them about multiplication? How do we get them dialed in with our lingo and our frameworks and things like that? So, like I said earlier, we're developing this customer journey where they can jump in and learn more, get access to some of our leaders, and then learn about the different areas of growth that we can provide for them through coaching relationships, through our learning communities, things that we're doing with Leadership Network, so things like that. Yeah.
I think I have two completely different questions, kind of in one. Thinking about, I'm a new church planter. What other ways, maybe outside of the conference in Orlando, what other ways can I get plugged into Exponential? And then kind of thinking about it from like the seat that Scott and I sit in, representing a company that provides literal tools to churches. How can we go, ooh, I want to support that? So I guess how can church leaders or church planters get more involved with Exponential? And then how can organizations go, I want to serve them? What are maybe the biggest needs or other ways people can connect to Exponential to help serve?
Yeah, I think coming out of Orlando, we'll have this, what we're calling this multipliers life map. It's still working terms, but
we do that a lot. We have working titles for everything.
This whole podcast is a working title. So
yeah. There'll be some things on the website, and there'll be some things in Orlando where they can get involved in all of the things that I just mentioned. So, stay up to date on our newsletter, follow us on socials. All of those things will be announced around and after Orlando. I'm trying to think some of the other ways. I mean, just we have a website called multiplication.org where we have tons of resources, from books to ebooks to digital access passes, to resource kits that we've done in the past on every topic that you can think of, from racial reconciliation to our theme last year of empowered living through prayer and fasting. So all of those things are readily available for leaders to jump in and get involved and get a taste of some of the things that we do. And then for resource partners like ministry brands, just staying connected with all that we're doing from an event standpoint. I think that is like the entry point in for people to get familiar with the likes of what you guys do, through the resource and partners that we have in Orlando. We have other events that we're going to be doing in the fall that will be announced in March as well. We've done regional events in the past. Those we're gonna do a little differently in the fall of this year. There's opportunities to partner with us on, co-branding an email campaign, or co-branding sponsoring a podcast, or there's things like that we're rolling out as well.
It's awesome.
I think there's so many other things. Like Leadership Network, all the resources. We could spend an entire episode just listing.
Yeah. That's the other thing is we've got we relaunched Leadership Network, which has a 35-year history in the church leadership space. We relaunched that last March, and we're continuing to do a ton of things there. Their focus is in the metaverse, microchurch, the next generation, business's mission, healthy leadership. So there's a ton of things there where we can plug resource partners into those things as well.
Well, you barely mentioned it. I'm going to mention it again for you. The volume of resources on your website is astounding. And there truly is. There is like something on every topic. I don't even know I don't know who is in charge of aggregating or curating that volume, but seriously, you guys make so many things available. It's amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, it's it's a small and mighty team, and we all try to pitch in and do our best to get all those things dialed in for the leaders that find their way to our site.
Yeah.
Nice. Gino, I'd love to ask this one last question before we jump into our final five here. We'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this question because it can be answered a lot of different ways. But what is one essential component of a healthy church?
Oh man, I think it's where I serve here in Nashville. I think a lot of the conversations that we've had is what does it look like to be healthy and generous disciple makers? I think that is one of the I think cornerstones to a healthy church today and in the future. I spent a lot of time with next generation leaders, and that two of the things that they are always asking for is better resources for how to make a disciple and better resources for how to do evangelism well. So I think I gave you two instead of one, but those two I think are key to seeing healthy churches thrive going forward.
Yeah, that's great. We'll allow two. They were a good two, so it's good by me.
We started off with 3 vinyl answers, so we might as well have 2. I mean, it's a theme. It's okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
I'm giving you a little bit of extra.
Yeah,
we like extra.
Great.
It's good.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into our final 5 here. We'll go through these a bit rapid fire, but would love to hear your answers. So one resource, and it could be within the exponential world, it could be without, but one resource you'd recommend, podcast, blog, website, whatever, to church leaders.
Yeah, my friend Steve Carter does a podcast called Craft and Character, which I think is great. He does a great job, talks to leaders from marketplace, ministry, nonprofit world around the country, and just really dives deep into some great conversations. I think that's one great podcast that leaders can look at.
That's great. We'll link to that in the show notes too.
I might have to answer this differently because it might be on vinyl, but if you're being very honest, what is the last thing that you listened to, not podcast, but song or album on Spotify, Apple, whatever, or good old-fashioned records?
Let's see, what was the last thing I listened to? So I listened to the latest album by The Heavy Hours.
Okay.
I've got music playing all the time here in my office. I don't have the turntable down here; it's upstairs. Okay. So I listen to it on Apple Music.
I feel like you're like listening to music right now, like not.
Not at this moment. No, not at this moment. I turned it off, but yeah, I mean, all the time music is playing. So
that would actually be amazing if you had the focus to listen to music and have a conversation.
I would be distracted. I would be listening to the music and have to ask you to repeat questions.
Yeah.
That's right. We should try that someday. Just everybody have headsets on and attempt to have a legit podcast.
That would be funny. That would be funny.
It would.
May never
if you do that, I would volunteer to jump into that again.
You're first on the list to get invited back to that one. I like it.
Hey, round 2, we're gonna all have headphones on. So. All right, what's your favorite piece of technology?
As cliche as it is, I gotta say the iPhone. I mean, just having a mini computer in your pocket at all times, it's amazing.
Yeah.
From music to email to the internet. I mean, it's insane.
It's wild. Yeah.
All right. What is one quote or piece of advice that has always stuck with you throughout the years?
I've had the luxury of having some great mentors throughout my career, ministry and marketplace. One of the best pieces of advice that I received early on in my career was always hire people that are smarter than you, because they will make you a better leader. I think that today stands true, even 20 plus years after first hearing it. I think it's a great piece of advice.
Yeah,
I like that one.
All right, last thing, one thing that you'd like to communicate to our audience of church leaders.
Oh, man. I didn't see that one on the list. I didn't prepare for that.
If you had a room full of church leaders and they said, hey, Gino, just give one piece of encouragement, what would you say?
This is one thing that I've learned over the last probably year working with some next-gen leaders. I've got a next-gen leader on my team. I think some of the things that we've gotten wrong in the past is telling young leaders how to go forward in their careers. I think we really need to just open up our hands and open up our hearts and listen how they want to be empowered. I think that's key to really having a thriving generational leaders coming forth out of the 18 to 30-year-olds that are just hungry for empowerment and hungry for people just to hear their hearts and in the way they feel they're called to lead.
That's good.
That's super good. I think really needed, because there has been that leadership style that's sort of like, I'll tell you how to do it and then you can go do it. And that's a much more, I'm going to empower you for who you are and how you're wired. I love that. Yeah.
They're definitely searching for authenticity in leadership. So
that's really good.
Well, can you give us and give our listeners just details around where to find out more about Exponential, where to maybe make it down to Orlando, the details there? Just if people are like, man, I love this, I love what Exponential is doing, I want more. Where should they go? How should they do that?
Yeah, exponential.org is our homepage where you can find out a bunch of things there. If you go exponential.org/2023, that'll take you to the information on what we're doing in Orlando, March 6th through 9th. We do it every year in March. This year we're talking about evangelism. Next year we're talking about disciple making. We'd love to have you guys come out, and I'll send Casey and Scott a little discount code that they can throw up in the show notes. So if you want to register,
all right.
We'll give you a bit of a discount to come out and check us out. Yeah.
Well, I'd highly recommend it. Exponential is just a place that I know that I've learned for years, having been a part of helping plant a few churches, and has just always, I would just highly endorse just the way that the resources provided, the equipping, and some of those catalytic moments to be able to sort of get your head above the clouds and see that vision and to see what could be. And so love what you guys are doing there. Really appreciate your time to chat with us, and would recommend everyone go check out everything Exponential's doing. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Church Leadership Lab. We'd love for you to leave a review, a rating, subscribe, share it. Our goal is to help as many people as we can when it comes to empowering healthy churches. So spreading the word always helps. So we appreciate that, and we will see you next time.